So, new theme music.
New theme music.
Shout out to Master Mike Higgins down in London, who is the bass man extraordinaire who put this together for me. Yeah, I'm very grateful. He's definitely the man with the master plan, right? So yeah, I'm very happy about that. I don't know why I wanted new music. I just thought, yeah, if I can get it, might as well do it. And he's a master at what he does. So really cool cat I worked with many years ago. And you know, I used to be a musician way back in the day. Well, questionably a musician, depends on who you're talking to.
Well, you were paid to do it, so
I was
think
paid,
that counts.
yes. But like most professions, a lot of people are paid to just be there and don't always do the correct job. And even though I tried my best, a lot of times my skill set was much lesser than the other people that worked in the bands and stuff.
Right.
So is that picking up my voice? It kind of sounds like it's cutting out.
No, getting your voice. That's fine.
Okay, it's very weird. So, is this the first time you've ever talked to a man behind the glass?
No.
Or anybody behind the glass? No, really. Go on, tell me that story.
Post office, bank.
Oh, post office bank? No,
They count, don't they?
No, I was talking about cool things like anybody in prison.
No,
yeah.
no, I've never visited anyone in prison.
I have visited
as of yet.
I visited one person in prison.
Okay.
And I probably shouldn't tell this story because I'll be in trouble with Ashley once I spill this. But yeah, way back in the day, I was about I don't know, my early 20s. I met this girl and we went on a couple of dates, and like 2 dates in, I didn't hear anything from her like the next day, and I'm like, oh, that's kind of strange. And the phone rings, and it's like, you have a collect call from blah 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 prison, and I was like, right, okay. And they're asking, for me specifically, and it was her, and she's like, look, I'm in prison. Can you come and give me some money for I guess it's the commissary. They have like a store in prison or whatever.
Okay,
and she didn't know if she was gonna be there all week, but she didn't have anything like a toothbrush and like other stuff, right? So me being the naive young man that I was, I decided to go down and put money in her commissary account or whatever it was.
Okay.
And then we had this conversation behind the glass, and she was like, look, yeah, I can get out, but it's going to be like $100 bail or something like that. I forget what the number was, like $200 or $300. So I gave her the money, and she got bailed out. And then, well, we never went out again after that.
No.
But and she eventually paid me the money back, which was quite kind of her. But it was a very interesting situation at the time. Yeah, it happens.
Okay. I was very nearly in a police lineup once.
Very nearly in a police lineup.
I was walking around town when I was a teenager, and some police approached with some friends, and some police approached us and said, "Would you be interested in doing a police lineup? We have this with suspect, and we need people who look vaguely like him.
Yeah.
Would you be interested to do it? You get paid to do it." So we were like, being young teenagers. Well, it must have been about 16 or something like that. It was like, sure, of course we will. We're going to get some money, so that's fine.
Yeah.
So they put us in a police van. We went to the police station. We hung around. And then the guy never turned up. I presume he was out on release or something, but he had never turned up for it. So we got our money and got returned home. So yeah.
Very cool. Yeah,
So
that's cool.
very nearly in a police line. It was not the most exciting story, but,
Yeah,
but
but
anyway.
what do you do if you're in the lineup and they identify you?
Well, yes. After the event, it was kind of like, well, what would happen
bring
if
this a little
they'd picked
closer,
me? And, what if they'd picked me and all that? And then what if, the person, took exception about it, was
Yeah,
hunting
sure.
us down and stuff? You kind of thought, maybe not. But
Yeah, wow, that's cool, man. Interesting. So I've never been in a lineup, never been asked. I've actually never been in trouble with the law ever. I don't know if that surprises you. It surprises a lot of people when I tell them that. But this kind of leads nicely, I guess, into the whole situation currently, man, in America and other places in England and everywhere else where people aren't respecting police officers. It's nuts.
Okay,
Ooh.
right.
Ooh,
okay.
wait, yeah.
Oh, we go with that
taboo.
point,
Well, why not? Why not? I mean, look. Okay, first of all, this is the first to add some kind of I guess story to this whole situation here. This is the first real conversation I've had with anybody besides Ashley, and and I've had a couple of phone calls with friends who have phoned up and stuff like that, but I haven't actually been able to have a good proper bitch and moan about anything that's going on.
Oh, good.
And
this might be a long one.
This might be a long one. Look, I am at the moment. I'm trying to resist all the urges to turn into the grumpiest old bastard that you've ever seen in your life. Like, I get so depressed when I look at the news. I've turned the news off completely almost. I'm not getting any notifications through on my phone anymore. I'm just trying to minimize everything. You know what I mean? Like, I can't take it. And the situation in America and with this whole, this fella getting killed and all that kind of stuff, it's horrible. Yeah. It's tragic, and the reaction to it, I think, is also very interesting and tragic. But I don't know if that's just the spin on the news, because the news are just ridiculous. And then you've got social media that ends up being ridiculous, and you just don't know what story you're getting from any angle on any of the stuff that's come through in the last 4 months.
We actually discussed this on our last podcast.
But we discussed it. Yes, but we discussed it in relation to politics, right?
Yes.
Yeah,
yes.
Which could be again the conversation I guess coming up shortly here as well
about where you get your news from and where you trust it and whether you trust it or not.
I don't know. Unfortunately, I get most of my news from Facebook and Twitter.
Oh, well,
I'll be completely honest. But okay, what are your alternatives besides that? Do you go directly to the BBC? Do you go directly to CNN?
Yeah.
Right? Okay. So I can get most of that stuff. I can get clips or partial clips from social media. But the problem with those clips is you don't ever get the full story. So an interesting thing that I've seen happen since this the George Floyd thing is there have been several rants from black guys on Twitter that are shown as clips where we're not going to take it and this and that and this and that and this is ridiculous, and they're like sound bites from way before anything ever happened. They're like clips taken from videos 2 years ago or 3 years ago when Obama was still in power and stuff like that. Like, they're taken out of context, and you get this 30-second spin.
Well, that's presuming anything's different.
Well, what do you mean by that?
Well, the relationship between people, ethnic minorities, and the police is something which has been going on for decades.
Yeah, and I suppose there are loads of reasons.
So therefore, the stuff they were saying, 10 years ago is probably the same as now.
Yeah, but it wasn't pertinent. In this one example that I'm giving, it was dude was talking about a President Obama and what he was doing for the community and stuff like that at the time, and it was in relation to something that was completely different than the riots or than defunding the police, etc. So I found that a little interesting. I found that, so what do you know? What do you take from it? For instance, our conversation here, I could say something that somebody could take a 20-minute or a 20-second clip from and basically paint me to be something I potentially am or am not.
Yes, I can understand that.
So,
yeah.
So I still have that problem with where I get the information.
Okay.
And I don't know how to get around that. I think there is one way to get around it. You have to sift through lots of it.
You have to, sift through it, but also get from a variety of sources, and also be open-minded about anything that you see.
Now, it's interesting that you say a variety of sources, because when I see sources, I see one story, I see one narrative, usually on news, on commercial news stations, right? So a very interesting thing to me is sometimes I watch YouTube clips on YouTube. I get in my feed, I get all the stuff from the BBC.
Right.
And if you go into the comments on any one of even a normal story that's
never read the comments.
No, of course I know that, but the comments are always interesting because you get people's take on what's actually going on, good or bad.
The comments are always from the people who feel strongly enough that they need to write something about it.
or want a virtue
So
signal or
it
whatever.
is obviously going to be the most biased, whether it's against or for. It's going to be the most biased opinion on the comments because they feel strongly enough that they're going to write about it.
Yeah, I suppose they're polarized. Usually, a comment is in one direction or another. But is that
no? You never see a reasonable comment because someone who's kind of thinking, well, maybe I see that point, is never going to comment about it.
An interesting thing, I guess, that appeals to me about reading the comments is I always kind of want to see what everybody else is thinking about the situation.
I mean, I am guilty of reading comments sometimes.
Yeah.
Kind of, but just for kind of like comic effect to kind of like read everything, see a load of people who are kind of thinking, well, why are you thinking that?
Yeah, and I don't know why I feel the need to actually want to see the way the direction's going.
Probably, it's a similar kind of reason why people slow down to watch car crashes.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, totally. Yeah.
People like that kind of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's an interesting take on it, actually, isn't it? Mm-hmm. So what is your kind of opinion on this whole George Floyd thing and with the reaction of the public and stuff and the reaction of how people are? How do you think that people have reacted in our country, so in England, as opposed to the States? Do you think it's parallel? What do you think about, because you're a big history buff, right? You are very much, your background was history, right? In university? No, I thought your background was history.
Politics.
Politics, all right.
Politics,
okay. But you're just a history nut, right? Yes. Okay, all right. I apologize. There's your context to this question. When you see people destroying statues and stuff like that,
yes.
What's your take on all this? Like, what do you think?
I think it's fine.
You think it's fine? Yeah. I thought you might think that, actually. Now, why would you think that it's okay?
I think it depends on what the statue is. In terms of the one in Bristol, then you had a lot of people who had been saying for a while that this statue needs to come down. But you also had a powerful lobby of people in the local government who were kind of like against it. And so therefore stopped it being taken down, and it just came to a head. It's kind of like, well, no, this is the perfect reason for us to take it down and remove it from display.
Right,
it doesn't need to be on display.
And an interesting article I read that is they're now taking that statue and displaying it in the Bristol Museum of History.
Yeah, right? Where it should be. I mean, we need to put it into its context. The guy was a slave owner. Simple as that. He traded slaves. That was how he made his money, how he made his fortune. He then may have used his fortune to then, for the good of the Bristol people, in terms of doing schools and things like that, charitable causes. But he made his money through buying and selling human beings. So why should we have a statue honouring that person? Now, people will say, oh, well, you can't learn history unless there's a statue in it. No, you don't learn history from statues.
Right. Yeah,
you learn history from reading books and go to museums and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So there's no reason for his statue to have been there.
Yeah.
Statues are to look up to people, literally. We look up to statues. So the statues you want, they have to be of people who you want to be
respectable, etc. Yeah,
exactly.
Of course. Yeah.
So there was no point in him having a statue at all. And it's not as if the statue had been there for centuries. No, from when he died. No, it was only been put up in about 100 years ago.
So why was the statue erected in the first place? Like, I don't really, I'll be honest, I don't know the history behind it.
Because there's these, I've forgotten their name, they're like Merchant Ventures or something like that, which is a society which he belonged to. And they were kind of like people who say, oh, we need to honour him. He has schools named after him. He has buildings named after him because he had given a lot of money to the town.
Right, yeah.
But that money is tainted.
Wow. Yeah, that's interesting. Okay. All right. I don't know the history behind that. And that's one of the reasons why I think that it's interesting that we are seeing statues being torn down all over the place from not just people like that, but okay. So what do you think when they went for like the Churchill statue in the center?
Well, this is where it gets more complicated, and there's no there's no right or wrong here. There is grey areas in some of them. Okay. I was trying not to use the term black and white in the whole
Yeah, of course.
aspect
No, yeah, of course.
but there is, in terms of Churchill, if there was a statue of Churchill in India, then by all means it should be pulled down.
Yeah,
because he, rightly or wrongly, probably more wrongly, facilitated a famine during the war in India.
right. Yeah,
which caused death of lots of people. So yeah, no, by no means there should be a statue of him in India. That's fine. I can understand why they wouldn't do that.
sure, of course.
But over here, he has obviously good points and bad points. So there are bad points. There was various other stuff he did beforehand, as like Gallipoli. There was the gassing of Kurds in Iraq. There was things like that which go against him. But he also has the big, massive plus point of his conduct during the Second World War.
Yeah.
So therefore, should he have a statue? Yeah, he should have a statue. But we also need to also mention all the bad stuff about him. You know, some of his views about the empire and derogatory views about various races and things like that. Yeah, they should be mentioned. Whether you want to have that on a plaque on his statue, I don't know. But these things should be remembered. But also, we should, for his role in the Second World War, yes, he should be looked up to.
Yeah.
So it is dependent.
Yeah, I suppose it's interesting to me because
I mean, a guy in Bristol who bought and sold people. No, we don't need a statue of him. There's no reason to look up for him. This good stuff that he did was made from the money of selling people. Churchill, yes, probably a statue, but let's recognise the bad stuff he did as well.
So, as a history buff, do you think that both the good and bad should always be weighed heavily in the context of what you're the subject, right? So in this instance, so all I saw was a statue being torn down in Bristol on the news and the reaction to it, and I didn't really know.
Well, we've learned a lot more about the guy from his statue being taken down than we did from all the century of his statue status.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. Yes. Yeah. So I mean, I think that's an interesting.
But we can't keep building up statues and then ripping them down to learn about the people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I agree with that completely. But it's interesting that if an event like this happens, it does bring to light that the wider public should look a little deeper into it, I suppose.
Well, yeah. But then you get kind of like looking at other areas and people kind of start looking, like, for example, the situation in Liverpool with Penny Lane. Like, was it named after a slave trader?
Right.
So do we want to change the name, because of that? And there's lots of people who say, well, actually, we don't know whether it's named after him. It could have been around before he existed, the name.
Okay.
So therefore, that's okay. But also, we could look at the change of the name. When people think of Penny Lane now, they're not thinking, oh, the slave trader, the person who was called Penny, the slave trader. No, they're thinking of the Beatles.
I'm going to be completely honest with you. I had no idea there was a Penny Lane slave trader. I don't even know what you're talking about right now.
There was a guy.
I know there's Penny Lane, and I know it's
Penny,
the Beatles.
Penny Lane in Liverpool, and there was a slave trader called Penny.
Right.
And there's lots of places in Liverpool named after former slave traders. Because Liverpool made a lot of money, just like Bristol, ports, made a lot of money as slave trading.
And Chinese immigrants and all kinds of things in Liverpool as well. Like if you go to the Liverpool History Museum, there's not really that much.
There's lots of racial history in Liverpool.
Yeah. The capital city of culture in 2008 or something like that.
Something like that, yes. But anyway, yes, lots of slave history, lots of racial history in Liverpool. But yeah, there was this guy who was a slave trader called Penny. And there's Penny Lane. And people are saying, well, was it named after him? But it's probably there's some people who researched it said probably not named after him. But also, as I just said, you have to look at it now. Penny Lane, you were not thinking Penny, the slave trader.
Yeah.
You think of the Beatles. So unlike in Bristol, where Colston Hall, was named after him, and when you see the name, you immediately go to this guy.
Yeah, whose main trade was in human beings.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's horrible.
So it's all there. It's not an easy subject. There was not a kind of like, yes, no, that statue can stay, this statue can't. There's lots of nuance to it.
Yeah. And that nuance. So let's talk about the reaction of a lot of people that fall into this kind of, I guess, protest or category of being involved in these kind of things. Mm-hmm. Do you think that's based on their own history or just hearsay? Like, so for instance, you and I may have this conversation right now, and I'll make it a point to go and look up Colston and actually, hopefully I'll make it a point after we're done, to kind of not fact check, but confirm what's going on. Now I know that I don't need to fact check something that's coming from you, because more than likely it's coming from several sources and the right place. However, I may get somebody else sitting in the chair who says something to me, and I may take it as verbatim or word of mouth or what, you know what I mean? I may take it as the gospel, and perhaps have a reaction within myself to drive me to protest and change something that I haven't maybe fact checked in the first place.
Okay.
So what do you think about the kind of crowd mentalities of change that we're seeing now, like with all these kind of things like defund the police and all those kind of stuff? I'm interested to get your take on it.
I'm not a natural going along with the crowd kind of person. I am not that kind of person who would do that.
Right.
I am slightly conservative with a small c, in terms of...
Congratulations. Mazel tov.
Yes. With that kind of thing. It's not my kind of style.
Yeah.
But I understand it. And I mean, do you know what defund the police means?
Well, this is the whole point. Does anybody know? I think that what
Yes.
people are crying out for is they want to abolish. They want to look after themselves. We want to govern our own.
No,
we want to govern ourselves.
That's not what defund the police is.
In whose context, though?
So this is the problem, whereby, because there was the incident the other week where the official BLM Twitter feed,
right?
Why on earth there's an official BLM Twitter feed? I've no idea. But they said something about how they had solidarity with the Palestinians, which, fully understandable, yes. There's a whole Middle East conflict. That's a completely different matter. But there is a lot of people who kind of want to go along with these things. So the BLM thing is not necessarily, it's not just one thing. There is lots of people with different views about it.
Yeah.
So you can't just say, oh, well, yes, this is what we want. Yeah, there probably are some people who want to get completely rid of the police, and want to have their own kind of like local, almost like a vigilante kind of like groups who would patrol and everything. Yes, there were some people who would think that, but there were probably loads of people who support BLM, the whole thing, who would be horrified of that kind of thing.
Yeah, of course.
So you can't presume that just because one person thinks that everybody presumes that. It is not. From what I observe, and bear in mind, this is two white guys talking about this. About this. From what I observe, I don't think there is a homogenous group who all believe the same thing. I do not think of that. But what I've seen regarding the defund the police is not necessarily getting rid of police forces. It is more a case of in recent years, it has been giving, especially in America, probably here as well, giving police more and more and more money. Why on earth do you have in America like police forces with like the amount of guns they have and like body armor and like tanks and stuff like that? This is the police. Police don't need that. That's the army who has that kind of thing. So it's kind of like, why are we giving them more and more money for this when what we need to do is take some of that money away from them and put them into things which would be a lot more useful, like mental health kind of people who could go. When the police are called, we are descending especially in America, you are descending for whatever reason a person with a gun to deal with a situation.
Right. So wait. It sounds like a gun issue and not a police issue.
Not necessarily a gun issue, but why is that for every single situation you are sending that person in, a person with a gun?
It has to be. I think it has to be.
And there are other things which are needed.
Yes, I agree.
Trained people who could counselors who could deal with people.
Yeah, no.
So that is from what I've read is a case of what the defund the police is more about. Is we need to put more money into other ways of solving issues than just a person with a gun.
Okay, now I will have to interject with my opinion on this one, because I think that that what you're saying there is you're making more of a gun argument than a police argument.
I don't think it's necessarily a gun. For example,
so the gun is irrespective for me.
If you have a neighborhood which is predominantly black, and there is problems in it, then a person just having people patrolling with guns is just, the police are not necessarily going to be the people who are going to be able to solve all of their problems. You need to put in more people who will be able to talk to the neighborhood, kind of work out what the problems is, and look at it that way.
No, I agree that there are other tactics that you could possibly use, and I do think that there is an overwhelming amount of funding and time in the police force. I mean, I know a couple of guys in high school that have become police officers, right. And I know for a fact that they're generally good dudes, and they are in probably a very high stress situation most of the times.
Yes. It's no wonder they're highly stressed with all the things they have to do.
So I have had dealings with the police in America and here. Okay. And by dealings, I mean like traffic stops or on a night out, friends of mine being arrested in America and in England, etc. And I will tell you that it's a very high stress situation. And I do agree with the fact that you're saying that funds should be put in other places. So mental health, etc. Obviously this case with George Floyd, this was a guy who obviously had a screw loose. And there were several different parts of that situation that were horrible. People not stepping in, his colleagues not stepping in and going, yo, tap out, let me take over. You're on this guy's neck and there's a problem here. That kind of stuff. That's all besides the point. So to get back to what you were saying there with a situation where, first of all, in almost every neighborhood in America now, it's going to be a mixed neighborhood. My America, or the America that I know growing up, is not. It's a melting pot. That's what we're proud of. Now, absolutely.
Is it?
Absolutely. Where I grew up in Ohio, without a doubt.
But that's your place in Ohio. The rest of the country isn't like that.
The rest of the country is 380 million people, right? So there are obviously going to be neighborhoods where there might be more affluent neighborhoods that you might not see a mix of different cultures. But I haven't run across very many of those in my life, and I've been all over the states. So I think that's kind of a generalization, right? There are black neighborhoods in places, or supposed black neighborhoods that I suppose have more of an ethnic, what's the word I'm looking for? There's probably a higher number of black people and Hispanics or whatever that the police might look as a militarized zone and go into, to put in your words, kind of like, have to roll in with a gun in a neighborhood that's predominantly not all. You know what I'm saying, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. I guess I'm not making my point clear. However, I don't believe that it's a situation of they come in there with the military force. Okay, there's one thing that I know or that I've learned from being stopped or from being in situations is if you show respect to the police that are dealing with you, 9 times out of 10 they're going to give you that same respect back, and you're not going to have to worry about it, right?
I think that's very dependent on the color of your skin.
I don't believe that. So here's and I'll tell you why I don't believe it. I don't believe it because I know I have several friends who've been pulled over the years, and I have several friends that will. Okay,
Are
so
they
I'll
white?
Yes, no, I'm talking about black friends. I'm talking about black friends. So I will give you an example. I'll give you 2 examples. I'll give you an example in America, and I'll give you an example in England. So I had a work meeting in England about 8 months ago, where I had one of the guys who was working for me. He was going, "Yeah, man, I get pulled over by the police all the time." A black dude, Muslim dude, right? And he's like, "Oh, I get pulled over all the time, and yeah, it always happens." And another one of my guys who also is black from Nigeria, he was sitting there and he's like, "I don't even get what's going on now," right? He was like, "I don't have those kind of problems." So I think, yeah, I'm not saying it doesn't happen. I'm not saying it doesn't happen because it probably happens. But I think that there are millions of stops, millions of interactions that the police have on a daily basis. And I would say that the majority of those, 99.9% of them, are probably all cool. That's my opinion.
Okay.
That's my opinion. And I guess so this is one of the things I've been kind of struggling with the last like kind of 2 or 3 months, right? Because you know me, you've known me for a while, and you know I have connotations of sometimes I like to call a spade, or I like to call a situation for what it is.
Yes.
Right? And I may do that a little too freely. And I have done that a little too freely in the past, right? And part of my kind of growth here is from coming up in Akron, Ohio, where I came up. I'm gonna diverge on a story here. Okay, I had a friend in high school who I absolutely loved, and we actually started a musical group together. We called ourselves Ebony and Ivory. Very cliche, right? I'll give you one guess who I was. And I absolutely love the dude, right? And as far as experiencing racism or things of that nature, it was something that I hadn't really seen until one day I walked into high school and someone had taken it upon themselves to spray paint KKK and various other racial slurs all over our school. And this really good friend that I had didn't talk to me most of the morning. And it wasn't until like 1 or 2 in the afternoon in between classes when I pulled him to the side, I went, "Yo, what's the matter?" I was ignorant to the fact that he obviously was upset because all these racial slurs and all this stuff had been put up on the walls. And I didn't look at it that way. I was like, "Well, that ain't me. That has nothing to do with me. I'm cool with you and you're cool with me. So what's the score?" And I pulled him to the side and I basically said, like, "Look, I don't know what the deal is, but I'm your dude, man. This has got nothing to do with me." And I was insensitive to the fact that he felt that way. Okay. Now,
well, that's okay. Can I interject?
Yeah, please interject.
See, this is the problem. We are 2 white people discussing this. Okay,
Yeah.
We have not lived this, so even though we have experiences through others that we could say
Lived what? Lived what though? Racism?
Yeah, we don't have to live with the racism. We're white. So, we've come.
Okay, all right. This is something I'm struggling with.
We've lived.
You don't think that because you're a white dude that you will experience any kind of, you won't experience the same discrimination possibly in certain situations.
I am a white male. I live in the UK. You are from America.
Correct.
We have got it made.
And well, I'm not saying that. I'm
That's
not
not
saying
to
we
say.
don't have it
That's
made.
not to.
No,
That's
that
not
has
to
nothing
say
do with racism.
we. That's not to say we may have things go against us at various points. That's
I'm
understandable.
not talking about opportunities. I'm not talking about all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about you can't say that racism is just a white and black issue. You can't. So you're telling me there are no black racists?
No, there is. Of course, there is.
Okay, well that sounded like you were going a different path there. I'm not talking about us.
But what I'm saying is that we are two white guys, and we have not lived this, and so it is difficult for us to talk about it. So what we should be doing. So you're saying, well, I don't believe these things happen in America. I think 99% of the cases are all fine and everything.
Yeah.
Well, how about we just listen to the people who deal with it, who have lived through it, and they're saying, no, this is not the case. So why are we not listening to them?
I think we are listening as a society. We are listening now and definitely taking note. However, what I don't want to see on the opposite end of that is I don't want to see things go.
But you're saying to them, well, no, I don't believe that exists.
No, I believe it exists, but I don't believe it exists on the scale that people are saying.
So you're not believing them.
Yeah, but what you're talking about is you're talking about the facts as opposed to no, not the facts as in like facts that are. You're talking about the facts of an opinion.
I mean, the statistics do point to there is institutional racism in both countries. Yes, I mean, black people are more likely to be stopped over here. Black people are more likely to be shot in America. These things are real.
And do you think that's situational, or do you think that is that is just racism? You don't think it's situational? And by situational, I mean, do you not think that in higher crime areas,
it's not just higher crime areas, though, is it? If
not?
You are more likely to be shot by the police in America if you are black.
I don't believe that.
Well, it's true.
I don't believe it. I don't believe it.
It is.
Well,
I can show you a video clip where they do the maths and they show, there are more white people who are shot. That is true. But that is because there is more white people in America. When you break it down into
statistically,
the percentage of the population, black people are much more likely to be shot.
Okay, all right. I mean,
and there's lots of incidences of where this, and like there's the woman who they went into the house, she was asleep, and they just shot her because they thought she was an intruder.
There will be so many instances that we don't even know
about. The
recent
video clip the other day.
Again, you're breaking it down to events that you've seen clips of. Do you know how many times that's probably happened that you've never even heard of it, just because someone who was shot was white or black or Asian or whatever?
But we're seeing
it happens all the time.
Yeah, but
it's going to happen.
But it also happens for black. If it happens all the time and we're only seeing a few clips of it.
No. But my point is these kind of things will happen all the time. What I believe is I believe that statistically, okay, it may be correct. So if you look at the population of America, and you look at the amount of deaths and you break it down on a statistician's level, where you go, okay, here you go, you've got 30% of the population getting 60% of the deaths. Okay, I believe those kind of things happen. I think that there are other reasons that they may be, one, reported in the news and picked up by news stations, right? Because there'll be loads of different incidences where there'll be racial profiling in reverse that you might not ever even hear about. There are loads of black cops who have died, for instance, in this kind of thing, in the riots, and since this has happened, and you may not even hear a story about it. It's on page 9 of whatever newspaper in the Herald, and it's not taken on as a narrative by, one, the people who make it possible to bring something up in an algorithm. So a news algorithm, Facebook, you go into a video, you watch one video, and then all of a sudden the rest of your videos are all, guys getting in knife fights because you watched one video of a guy getting in a knife fight, that kind of thing, right? You watched a video of a kitten playing with a ball of string, and now all of a sudden 4 videos in, you got another kitten playing with another ball of string. These kind of things happen, right? I think that there are events that happen all the time in all kinds of walks of life, black, white, yellow, orange, green, whatever you want to say, that happen with the interactions that you have in a lawless or a law-abiding society. These kind of things are going to happen. You've got 400 million people almost, right? You're telling me that you're not going to have interactions with bad apples from all creeds and colors in that time and in that situation, and you're not going to see every single mistake that's happened along the way? It happens all the time, dude. I'd love to see the numbers on that.
I think you need to listen more to the people who live with it.
And who are the people who live with it, though?
Black people in America.
How many black people in America do you know?
None.
Right. Okay. So the information you're getting is from
I'm trying to
where?
think, do I know anyone? No, I don't. Just checking. Checking.
My point being is, okay, if that is the case and that is the
but
narrative.
There's been plenty.
I'm not saying it doesn't happen, dude. I'm not saying it doesn't happen. But what I'm saying, it happens a lot, and it may happen too much. But there are other factors that will affect the final outcome. There are things like neighborhoods that are low income. There are things like society. There are things like after school programs that aren't in effect that will have.
So that's where we get back
effect.
to defunding the police. Shouldn't the money we're using when we're kind of like bulking up police officers in riot gear, shouldn't that money be spent better to stop the causes of these things happening?
I mean, I think that
people don't riot for no reason.
No. I'm not saying people do riot for no reason, but what I'm saying is yes, okay, I will agree that the money is probably not spent wisely. But again, I'm not the guy doing the budget, and I'm not the guy who also wants to send my police officers out without the correct gear, just like I wouldn't want to send soldiers to war without the correct gear. These guys need this stuff. Now, they might not need a Sherman tank to bust into whatever in Podunk, wherever in Alabama that they've got a bomb squad and whatever, but they will need the proper equipment and the proper things that they need. Now, here's the facts. The facts are America is a gun-abiding society, okay? There are more guns in America than there are people. Mm-hmm. Yeah? You can't have an unarmed police force policing the streets of America. It's impossible.
Yes.
Impossible. You can't in good faith send somebody out to do a job in a gun society, which America is and probably always will be, and I hope it always will be.
I mean, I wouldn't link these two things together. I know you said earlier you were saying, well, it sounds like a gun issue. No, they're two different things.
Okay, all right. Well, as long as we agree on that. But you can't.
But yes,
you can't send somebody into a knife fight with a spoon.
I understand that.
Okay, all right.
But I think the American police are way too trigger happy.
I mean,
if you have a person running away from you, you do not shoot them.
There are times when that's happened, and I think that those times. I mean, I've seen videos as well as we all have of guys being shot that shouldn't have been shot. And those police officers should be dealt with in those situations on a case-by-case basis in a court of law, and they should have the book thrown at them, and they should be taken care of.
But you know why they're not?
Why?
Because the police, it's the police unions which are the problem. They're the ones which are so powerful that they stop investigations like that happening. Okay,
that is probably true, and that is a big problem. Systematically, you can't have that happen. If somebody breaks the law, even in the defense of the law, supposedly, like being a representative of the police force, you're supposed to be a representative of society as we know it, right? You're supposed to abide by the law. There should be no differentiation.
But that's the problem. You're sending people out there who know that they are backed up by their union, so that if anything was to happen, they would get away with it. And they are fully armed, and there is no consequences. So you were sending a person out who know whatever they do, there's going to be no consequences at all. So
and that can't happen,
and that's a bad situation.
So what you do is or what I think needs to be done is I agree with you. There needs to be more training. I mean, the statistics of somebody getting a badge put on. I mean, I think 2 or 3 of the guys that were involved in that event, right? They were only on the force for less than a week or a month or something like that.
Probably.
Is that right?
Yeah.
There definitely needs to be more training. There needs to be more situational training, and there needs to be more support. So back to the defund the police thing, I guess.
So there you go. There's an issue of where, but that's a whole thing of defunding the police.
But you can't defund it. You got to throw more money at it.
You're using the money. It's not necessarily defunding in terms of taking away. It's using the money in a better way than just arming people and sending them out to do what they want to do.
I would venture to say that most of the police forces have the bare minimum when it comes to that situation.
Yeah,
in the first
exactly.
Place. So you can't take any of that money away from them. You have to.
But that's what I'm saying. The defund the police isn't just taking the money away from the police. It is using the money in a smarter way than it currently is.
Okay. And you think that's what the general public are calling for when they say defund the police?
I don't know whether the general public know exactly what people who are saying defund the police is talking about.
So this is...
It's probably not the best use of language, you saying defund, because that's why there's loads of white middle-aged Americans going, you can't defund the police, you can't take away the money from the police. No. They don't understand what it means exactly. Maybe they need to, but it's not. I guess it's not as catchy saying, well, what we need to do is, think of better ways to spend the police budget.
So I guess that it's not, for me, it's not a...
Just like when the term Black Lives Matter, there's loads of people saying, oh no, all lives matter. Well, obviously all lives matter.
Yeah.
But it's at this moment in time, we're looking at black lives. All lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter. That's a better kind of like saying. But, people are going like Black Lives Matter. And then you get people who get angry and go, oh no, all lives matter. So,
so I think
defund the police is a more catchier phrase than saying, let's spend the police budgets in a better way.
Yeah, so this
not so catchy.
This is kind of what I was kind of, I guess, getting to when I was going to tell the two stories about my two situations, right? Mm-hmm. Is I suppose is white guilt a thing?
Probably.
Right? I suppose I have white guilt. I have guilt about feeling, I've always had it from a young age, right? So from this time that I had this situation in high school, I always felt like, not responsible. I don't feel responsible, but I always felt like, so for instance, on that day, I felt ashamed that somebody had put that up there. Mm-hmm. And I felt not guilty, but I felt very upset that my friend, someone who a dude who I love dearly, and this story has a further escalation, which I'd like to talk about.
Okay.
Because it's something I suppose not proud of in my life, and I'm willing to put it out here. But I felt not guilty, but not responsible. But I kind of felt responsible, but not responsible, right? Like, oh my God, like this is so bad that this thing has happened. People writing KKK and all these slogans all over the wall, and I felt ashamed or like I was being pigeonholed to feel a certain way mm-hmm. that wasn't a reflection of me as a person or me as how I conduct myself in my life. I've never conducted myself in that way. Mm-hmm. My best friends have always been my best friend in high school, or my two best friends was this guy and another cat that I'm still friends with today, who's not black, but that's neither here nor there. They're just my friends. Mm-hmm. In university, my two best friends, they were black, and I love those guys like there's no tomorrow, right? And still to this day, I see them on Facebook, and I just think, wow, I'm very glad that they're in my lives. What I don't like feeling is like part of this whole reparations or guilt or inner guilt. I don't like feeling like just because I'm a white guy and I've never harmed anybody, there's all kinds of other things that go around it. There's, what do they call it when you get a job before somebody else? You're like, there's 7 people up for a job, but they want to make sure that 2 of the people that are hired for the 4 jobs are of ethnicity and not white. What's the word?
Positive. Yeah.
left my mind for some reason.
It's not positive discrimination. It's positive. Yes, I know which one you're on about.
There's a word for it.
Yes.
Right. I don't like. I guess I'm seeing all this virtue signaling on LinkedIn. I'm seeing all these things, and I guess I feel white guilt. I feel guilty about it for some reason. Like I should, like it's something that I should be responsible for because it has nothing to do with me. It has nothing to do.
You feel guilty? What about that?
I feel like I'm being, and this is I think one of my problems. I feel like
guilty about being white.
Yeah. I feel guilty, like I'm responsible. Well, I'm not like I'm responsible, but like just because I'm white, people would look at me and like we're two white guys trying to have this conversation, right?
Yes.
Which is I guess it's ironic. Is it ironic? It's not ironic because we should have this conversation.
We should. Yes.
But we won't have that perspective of doing it. You know, like for instance, you know, one of the things that I've always thought is. I'm not responsible for it, mate. Like I was like on that day, I was like, I didn't paint that shit on the wall. So what are you mad at me for? I didn't do anything. You know what I mean? Like, why are you, it shouldn't even, I couldn't see why. I was too selfish to see why he was upset.
You can't see the link between you as an individual and your situation within a society.
Yeah. And this is something I felt bad about. So, and then many years later, right? So long story short is he went on to, I kept in touch with him after high school. And one day in Black History Month, so we had things like Black History Month, or we have Black History Month, but we had it in school. And one day after we had graduated in university, years later, I mean, this is probably like 10 years ago, he had shared a link in Black History Month about, and it was basically a story that linked the Statue of Liberty to slavery. And that the French had given the Statue of Liberty to the States, and the chain around her ankle was all about freeing slaves and all this kind of stuff.
Yes.
And but the story that he had shared was one that was like on Snopes or like on one of these sites that was like a very, very agenda-filled story that basically said like, look, this is white America trying to hide the fact that the Statue of Liberty is black and all this kind of stuff. And I tried to understand it and read it. And then I tried to ask him what was going on. And then I instantly equated it to the feelings that I had that day, which was, yo, bro, it ain't my fault. Like, listen to yourself. You know what I mean? Like, and I felt bad, and it was very selfish about how I dealt with the situation. And I feel that I would have done it a lot different now than I did when I was a younger man, because basically, and I feel like maybe, hopefully, he would have dealt with it differently. But he just basically said, look, if you don't like what I'm sharing, bro, unfriend me. And I was like, whoa, okay. And admittedly, I did unfriend him, and you know, and that was stupid because I shouldn't have done that. But I don't like the fact that when we talk about things like reparations and when we talk about this in the first place, I don't like the fact that I even feel uncomfortable talking about it just because someone's going to look at me and go, right, inherently, maybe you're racist or whatever, or maybe I am racist. You know, I don't like feeling that way because
in terms of are you racist, you probably are. We all are. That's the thing. We all have, because of the way we have grown up, as you said, you know, black people can be racist as well. It is likely that we have had at some point some kind of issue with somebody because of the color of their skin at some point.
Yeah, I don't know.
It's likely. There were when I think back when I was a child, I mean, there was things, and now you look back and say, well, you know, that wasn't particularly the greatest thing to have said or done.
You know, it's an interesting thing on this is,
but it doesn't.
It happens to me still today, but not towards black people. I often get when I'm in business meetings or when I'm just in dealings in the UK. Obviously, I'm a foreigner. I'm as foreign as they come to our land, to our country, to this great nation that is the UK. You know, I'm an American and I'm a foreigner. I'm as foreign as everybody else. But when I'm having conversations sometimes with people, they will start bitching and moaning about the Poles or about the Romanians or about, and they'll start talking to me, as if these bloody foreigners. Yes. And I have had several times when I've had to remind them, hey, I'm as foreign as they come. Yes. You know what I mean? Like, so what's the problem that you have here? Do you have a problem with? And then it becomes a completely different conversation, and I find that's kind of interesting as well. But that's that's what that reminded me when you started down that road. So again, so tying back into how I've always felt growing up, when I grew up in Ohio the way I grew up, I see my friends from, I see some people trying to make amends, not make amends, trying to live the right way. And I don't like the fact that sometimes I'm instantly put on I guess, a black or a white side, right? I don't like that. And I don't like the fact that I'm sometimes put on a foreigner or an English side or whatever.
Well, I think America is a lot more polarized than you think it is.
Oh, I mean, I'm not saying it's not polarized. I think that this kind of stuff happens often, and these conversations have to happen, and hopefully will happen going forward a lot. However, I do think that there are people that take it too far on both sides. For instance, I love the fact. Here's one for you. Okay. I love the fact that these is it the English Defence League or whoever came and stood around Churchill's statue in London. I love the fact those dudes stood there and protected the statue.
But they didn't. It was all just for show.
Okay. So even if it was for show, I still loved it. Inside of me, I was thinking, yeah, I hate that. I hate what they stand for, and I hate how it goes. But I thought, when I looked at that, I thought that's a good move, right? Because if they are actually standing there for that reason, which they're probably not, they're probably standing there just because they want to rough up, or they want to do whatever. But I hated the fact.
A bunch of bored guys wanting a pretend fight.
Yeah, I get that. And they found
like, hold me back in case I hurt someone.
No, I get that. But what I'm trying to say is deep down inside of me, I looked at that and I went, right on. I was like, there's patriots that are wanting to do right by this. Honestly, and I'm telling you how I felt. Now, looking into it afterwards.
Patriots giving the Nazi symbol, yeah.
Well, none of the stuff I saw, they were giving any kind of Nazi symbols or doing anything like that, right?
Uh-huh.
And that's because, again, I saw it as a clip on Facebook that was an outtake of the whole entire situation, right? Okay? So, again, put together by a group who probably wanted to push that agenda. But I hate the fact that the first thing I thought was, right on. Those guys are doing right by sitting there and standing for what they believe in. Now, whether or not looking further into it, you realize that they're mostly just looking for a fight and they're just racist as anybody on the planet, etc. They will have their own points, and I took it upon myself to look at it and go, okay, my initial reaction was, yeah, right on for these guys. But it wasn't right on for these guys who are white who are going to, fight a bunch of people. It was right on for these guys for standing for what they believe in. Do you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, but I wouldn't say what they believe in is particularly great.
Well, no, and that's what I'm trying to say after.
As I said, going back to what we said at the beginning in terms of Churchill, they're kind of like, we have to defend him because of all the heroic stuff he did during the Second World War.
But
which is, you could analyze what he did during the Second World War and not necessarily, he may not be as wonderful as they think he is.
Yeah.
So they're kind of like, they're not defending Churchill for the famine in India or the gassing of the Kurds in Iraq. They're not doing that at all.
I understand that. Yeah, I understand that. But what I'm trying to say is I guess as part of this whole entire conversation is I then don't like the fact that I'm putting myself in a category, right? So like you, I don't go with conformity of anything. I've never worked well in a corporate environment or in large retail companies or any of the businesses I've ever worked in because I hate being a lemming and I hate jumping off the cliff with the rest of the clowns, right?
Yes.
So I guess part of, I don't know, maybe I'm just talking about my own feelings. Part of what bugs me about all this is the fact that I feel as if I'm put on a side automatically. And I've never liked that from a young age. I've never liked being put on a red team or a blue team. I don't want to, you know what I mean? I've never dug it.
Understand that.
I've never dug it. And I guess that's a simpler way of me saying it. And I just went around the houses and probably a confusing conversation, which isn't, So that's how I feel, and I don't like feeling that way. I don't like feeling like I'm putting.
Well, it's like there was the what was it? There was, a few years back, there was a thing about there was the whole introduction of something, a company being, I think it was either the BBC or something like that, was institutionally racist, and it's kind of like I never liked that kind of like that phrase, institutionally racist. Like it's tarring everyone with the same brush, saying everyone is racist in that place.
Yeah.
Which, and you know, and I thought about it. I said, well, that's not nice. You know, maybe they're not racist. Some people may be wonderful people in their organisation, hold no racist views. But then you kind of like have to think about it. Yeah, they may not, that individual, you as a person in that company may not specifically be racist, but the whole culture within the organisation, there is a deep lying problem with race in that. And you've got to accept that. It may be not you as a person, but you, whether it's in an organisation, a company, society as a whole, you have to look around it and say, yeah, there's problems here with race, and I, as an individual within that society, therefore, you know, that is where it comes from. You are a part of the problem.
Yeah, I suppose so. Yeah, and I have to accept that.
You have to accept your position as a person within society.
So then, what do you feel about what's your take on reparations?
Reparations? Depends what reparations we need. So should we be giving people whose ancestry is from a slave, should we be giving them a certain amount of money? Is that what you're looking at?
That's what I mean. Yeah, that's what I mean.
Me, my individual view, probably not. No.
Okay.
But should we be using money is that person still being held back by the deal they've been given in life because their ancestors were slaves? Yes, we should try and help them be raised up from their position.
And see, this is a reason why I feel bad for a statement like that, because I think to myself, I don't think.
I mean,
I would hate to think that anybody would be held back because they're black in any situation, or any color. For
if we look at, for example, the Deep South in America, where slavery was the major thing, right? If we look at it, so slavery was abolished when 1860 something or other, wasn't it? So we're looking about 150 years ago. And so slavery in America was abolished. And basically what happened then was it just, black people were just employed rather than rather than being slaves. They were just, instead, they had no land, they didn't have any job opportunities, so therefore they had to work for the former slave owners still on the land still.
Yeah.
And they had to continue doing that. And their position didn't improve. They were then brought in Jim Crow laws where they couldn't vote and things like that, keeping them. It was development of like a system of apartheid in the southern states.
And that continued. I'm going to stop you. I'm going to stop you just for a second, right? Because I understand that these things happened, right? But from 1960, when segregation stopped, for the most part, in most places publicly, right?
Yeah.
I think it was in the States in the 60s. That was the last kind of like black-white toilet and all that kind of stuff, right? Or people of our generation, so born in the 70s. Do you think that... Well, no, this isn't a question. This is going to be a statement from me.
Okay.
I think that the friends that I have, that I grew up with, that were black, had exactly the same, if not more opportunity for advancement than I did.
Well, that's we're talking about Ohio. We're not talking about the Deep South here.
No. Well, okay. It's parallel, though. It can be parallel still, because you're talking about the Deep South in the late 1800s. Right?
No, I'm talking about in this time, so 150 years ago, when
I'm not talking about generational.
No,
I'm talking about our generation.
I'm saying in that time, the point I was trying to make was in that time, you know, people through people's ancestries, you know, things go up and down. I've looked at my family tree. You know, we're from most of my thing is from southern England, going back to people who lived in the cities, to people who lived in the countryside, all of that. So there were some people who are poor, some people who are quite well off. These things flow up and down, okay? But in the South, 150 years ago, slavery abolished, their lot has not improved. you're looking at people in the South, they generally not improved that much. So that's why I'm saying, in terms of like reparations, you said, should we do reparations? Looking at individuals, no, not necessarily giving people specifically money because their ancestors were slave. I'm not saying that, but definitely we should be looking. You should be looking at investing more money in the areas where they haven't. If society for them hasn't improved in 150 years, we should be looking at putting money to have that. To make life better for them.
Whereas I guess I strip what I'm trying to do when I look at this situation is I'm trying to strip color from it completely. I don't think there should be any kind of reparations for anything that happened generations past. Okay,
but maybe not look at it in terms of reparations. Looking at America should be looking at investing in certain areas. You could say exactly the same in the UK. There are areas in our country which should certainly see much more investment than they are. I mean, this is completely going in different direction with the conversation, but in terms of transport investment, London gets a huge amount of transport investment compared to other areas of the UK. That should be shifted away. There's things like HS2 and things like that. This is completely. But this is a kind of like parallel thing. When one area has been getting, London gets disproportionately much more investment than the rest of the UK.
But that's my point. So we're kind of going away from it. Shouldn't be based on any kind of reparations for black or white, or for how we mistreated, the Chinese in this country, or how we mistreated certain ethnicities that came to America. There are several Irish Americans that may have the exact same argument in the States, for instance, as someone who. Well, I don't suppose it's parallel, but you understand what I'm trying to say, right?
Yeah.
Like so for me, I think if we strip all that out, then yes, what we're saying is there are loads of things that we could do as a society to improve the overall outcome of things like police relations with the public or community relations. We could put the money in better places. I agree with that. But to kind of go back to my point, one of the things that and I guess this also goes to the not guilt I felt, but how I feel about life and how it is that you're growing up. I've always believed, and it's something I've said all the time, the son is not responsible for the sins of the father. Now, that's to a point, obviously, because you can say that there's probably generational wealth that are still reaping the benefits of what happened many, many years ago.
Yes.
So could you, in fact, maybe go into those families if you could prove it? Like, for instance, the dude in Bristol's family, I'm sure still is living somewhere and might.
So should reparations, should money be taken off them to give to others?
Yeah, I mean, potentially, but potentially that's that's the whole point of reparations, I suppose. So I don't believe that should happen.
No, but then also I think it is good. For example, there's companies. Like, for example, the Lloyd's in the insurance company in London are aware that a lot of their money was earned through insuring slave ships and everything. So and they have said, we're going to use some of our money to put to good causes, which will enhance black people's lives.
Sure. Right.
That I think is great.
Yeah, because it's interesting to me, like what I am seeing though now, currently, since these current events, is even if I watch CNN or CNBC, where I'm trying to get information on stocks, most of the news has shifted to affirmative action. Affirmative action, is that the word?
That's the word. Yes, there we go.
So most of the conversation has gone to affirmative action and to companies making sure that there are black board members and higher amounts of black management, et cetera. But
it doesn't necessarily needs to be in a kind of black and white aspect. You don't necessarily just have to put a black person on the board. You should be looking at getting the right people, but making sure they were
Right.
whether they're black, whether they're Asian, male, female,
Right.
that you have this representation.
Yeah, and that's the thing that I think that they're missing in a lot of the conversations. I think, and the thing a lot of people miss when it comes to that. So you know, I think it should always be the best person for the job. Now, you're probably going to get a talent pool that's completely different.
Exactly.
But as someone who has always tried to improve myself, my adult self, half-assedly in my early 20s, obviously, I wasn't very serious about education when I was in high school and in university. I didn't take the whole entire experience of self-betterment right at that time. As someone who has tried to work my way up, I guess not the corporate ladder, but society's ladder or whatever ladder you're talking about, I've tried to improve myself from the beginning. I feel that the onus has to be placed on the individual. Therefore, I don't think affirmative action is something that should be allowed. I think it's absolutely horseshit.
But the problem is, if you don't do anything, then you're always just picking the best person for the job. It's always just going to be a white male.
Yeah, I don't believe that. See, and this is the problem I've got. So this is a whole other situation. It's a whole other conversation.
What can you do to get a better options if the best person is always a white male?
Well, why would the best person always be a white male?
Because things are stacked up better for white males than they are
How?
for everyone else.
How though? How?
Because things are stacked up better for males than females.
So situational, men are working longer hours. Men are in positions where they're not going to take paternity, for instance, things
all
like that.
Yeah, all things like that.
There are things like that, but I don't believe that. I don't believe that the best guys.
Well, why are men paid more than women?
Because they work longer hours and they basically. Yes, they're there more. They're there more. Period. I've got mixed views on this, right? and again, maybe this is a gender bias, and maybe this is something I need to reflect on, and it may change eventually.
Maybe we should have a woman here giving her opinion.
I would love to have a woman here giving her opinion.
That's why we should listen to women more. Like, for example, the whole thing where there's a thing where I've seen it mentioned about where women kind of like, there's this date in the year where women say, oh, okay, well, we are now working for free for the rest of the year because that is the period in terms of our pay. That is where it goes up to. But now we have to work the rest for free, whilst men get the whole year.
I don't know, man. I don't know. This one I'm very biased on. Right. I think that it happens for quite a few reasons. So okay, there's always going to be a good old boys club in most situations, right? And in most companies, some companies have several different sets of agendas, right? And I think as a result of, well, I don't know. I can't just look at that statement of it's always going to be a middle-aged white male. I can't look at that and think that it's true, but it probably is true. But I think that there are environmental factors which also will give a hardworking man, whether he's white, black, or whoever, or woman, a leg up. Anybody who puts their nose to the grindstone and decides that they want to eat the people around them to go up the corporate ladder can do so.
You are presuming that every child, when it is born, is given the same hand to play.
No, nobody's given the same hand to play. No. I'm not assuming that at all. Well, yeah, no, I am assuming that.
Yeah,
but
exactly.
you have the personal onus to then play that hand how you want to play it.
But they're not. That's the problem. And this is where people say, well, what about working class white people? Yeah, exactly. They're not dealt the same hand. A working class white person necessarily isn't going to get to the best universities. No. But neither is the black person, Asian person. It's the same. Nobody is dealt the same hand, and so therefore, because there are certain people who get dealt with a better hand, they were the people who rise to the top, and then when it comes to the big company kind of looking to employ who doing their candidates and everything, they will see these big same people. So what do you do about that? You have to somehow do some kind of action which is going to help people who wouldn't normally be able to get there.
See, the way I see it, or the way I've experienced it, is it goes back to the example that I was talking about before. So the people that I know that have worked their way up a corporate ladder, or have been successful since high school, or who went to university, who didn't have to take out student loans, who perhaps got scholarships because of ethnicity or minority groups, or Christ, everybody in America thinks they're a quarter Cherokee, so they can get a free ride in university or whatever, right? I think that everybody is dealt a relatively similar card. I think that there will be loads of people who are lucky along the way, right place, right time, right parents, right situations, etc., who maybe get further up than they would have without that. Yeah. I do believe that. I think that they have that momentum. I believe that there's forward momentum in life, that sometimes you can take that momentum and you can roll with it, and then other times you got to start pushing the freaking rock uphill to get where you're going.
This is similar to what we said at the beginning, where there is no yes and no, there's no correct answer, there's gray areas. So, yeah, it's
bullshit.
It's not bullshit. No, no. There are people. Yes, there may be a person. You may have affirmative action where this black person gets up when they shouldn't, and there'll be a white person who lost out. Yes, that will happen, but there is no correct answer for this.
Well, I think the correct answer is you don't have it in the first place.
In which case, you continue with the same people.
You don't. I don't think you do, and here's why. Because I think eventually the scales will all even correctly if we all have the same positive attitude towards why it's happening.
But that was my point in terms of slavery finishing 150 years ago. There's very little change in 150 years in the Deep South. There was very
You've
little
never even
change.
been to the Deep South. What are you talking about? You've never even been to the Deep South. You don't know what happens in the Deep South. With all due respect, you have no clue what's actually going on in the Deep South.
Okay, and you've traveled through...
I've traveled to the Deep South. I've got friends who live in Atlanta. I've been all over. I've been all over the South. And yes, there will be situations. But
you've got the person... Who is it? The person who is in charge of elections in Mississippi the other day complaining that black people are organizing in terms of registering to vote. You have the person who is in charge.
Yeah, how could that even be? How could that even happen?
Because there is that's racism in the South. That's why.
Yeah, there is racism in the South, yes. But what I'm saying is that's neither here nor there as to it shouldn't be something that is affected by how...
But these aren't
as
isolated
soon as you
incidents.
all right, okay, here's my example. This is a personal example I can put to me, right? I want to go outside and I want to run up a hill, okay? I'm obviously overweight. I have a situation that I could again be profiled or shamed for. Oh, look at fat boy over here. He's lazy. He's whatever. He's this. He's that. Yeah, right? Okay. The fact of the matter is if I wanted to, right, or not if I wanted to, because this is going to be me admitting that I'm just not doing what I need to when it comes to losing weight, etc. But I could make myself a victim, and I could be like, oh, boo-hoo, but I can't do that. I can't do that because I'm fat and I'm me, and you just have to take me for who I am, right? And I should be able to run up that hill just as fast as anybody else, but I can't. But because they're all looking at me as the out of shape fat guy, right? I'm fifth fastest. I beat these other two skinny dudes up the hill, right? I beat them.
Right.
There's three positions. You have to make reparations for the fact that I'm different. It's me.
But what if it's a skinny person who's carrying a big, massive rucksack on their back?
Yeah.
And they can't run up the hill because of that.
Okay, yeah.
So it's not because of their own; it's because they've been given this rucksack to carry.
No, they take the rucksack off, and if they
Well, that's the thing.
they
You're
find a
taking the
way to
rucksack-
lighten.
You
li-
take the rucksack
yeah.
off, and you can
So,
make sure that
no,
they
no,
can.
so in that example, they're in the same boat as I am. They can lighten their load as I can lighten my load, but it doesn't make me special.
Some people can't lighten their load
Why?
because they've
Why?
given-
Because they made themselves a victim.
society has
they
given
made
them
them-
this baggage to carry.
They've made themselves a victim. It depends on what baggage you're talking about. See, I want to be clear when I say that I think that you have a starting block, which is your starting block is the same as mine at this point, right? We're old in the tooth. We're long in the game. If you and I decide we want to do anything at our age, we're on equal ground. I don't care if I'm fat, skinny, black, white, red, yellow, orange, whatever. I can look at the universe around me and I can go, right, I'm responsible for doing this. And I don't care who stands in my way. I'm going to eat them for breakfast. And woe betide you if you get in front of me when I try to go to my goal. And I believe that everybody has that equal right in life, no matter what situation they're in.
That's a very American view.
Yes, and God bless America. No, I don't think it's an American view. I think it should be a
think
world view.
No, it's a very American view that this is what America's built on, that it's kind of like, well, you got to make it for yourself.
Yeah, of course, man.
Yeah, but not everyone can because of the situation they're born into.
Yeah, I think it might take longer. I do agree that, yeah, you might have harder hills to climb and you might have longer roads to hoe. But I think that you have to start from a I'm not a victim mentality. And I believe you could be made a victim for several things in life, whether it's being fat, whether it's being white, black, green, yellow, orange, etc. And I think you can choose to, and so one of the things I've always been confused about in life, and I don't know how you feel about this, is I look at heritage sometimes with pride, and then I also look at it as an excuse that some people make to segregate themselves. So, for instance, let's say that let's use the Native American thing in America, right?
Okay.
Everybody supposedly has a little bit of Native American in them, or might have Native American in them, and it might not be any more than an 1/8 or a 16th. But some people may take that as they want to get in touch with their heritage or their identity.
Yeah.
Right? And they may take that over the top. And then by taking their identity over the top, they may segregate themselves from other people. So for instance, you may look at yourself as like, okay, if I want to become Muslim, I take it almost like a religion. I'll take it as my identity is now I'm a Muslim. And so it's a me against them kind of thing. Right? I've always felt that is not a well-rounded approach to life because it's polarizing. Because instantly if I go, there is a God or there's no God, right? I'm picking a side and I'm choosing where to take my stand. And I believe that you have to take your stand on certain things, but I only take my stand if it doesn't polarize me against somebody else or somebody who's good and moral. And obviously, you know what I mean when I'm talking about taking stands. I'm not talking about taking stands against what's right and wrong. Mm-hmm. I'm talking about putting myself on that blue or red team, like we were talking about before, right? Yeah. Like, so for me, I think sometimes heritage is misconstrued, misinterpreted as a way of life instead of looking at your culture as.
Heritage can be a very powerful thing.
Oh, yeah, well, I mean, it can be a very powerful thing unless you're a middle-aged white man.
Why?
No, that was just me trying to make some sort of a joke. Whose heritage is basically raping and pillaging, the Western world. Like so. But you could say that, right? You could.
But somebody.
I could literally go. I could say to you, look, you're a middle-aged English dude, right?
Yes.
A small little island that tried to take over the freaking world. And that could be your heritage, and that could be how you identify yourself.
But some people do that.
And a lot of people do that.
The people who you admiring for protecting Churchill's statue.
Yeah, of course.
That's them kind of people.
So I guess what I'm trying to say is I sometimes get confused myself with heritage and culture, right? So you see what I'm saying, right?
But, I mean, in terms, you got to think of it in terms of black people, kind of like going into their African heritage and be kind of like being very pro it. I mean, bear in mind, a lot of these people, they don't know where their ancestry is from.
Sure.
Because they no idea where they're from. They can just go back a few generations and it comes to an end because their people were just shipped over from Africa and they don't know their names or anything like that. Surnames in America of black people are not their surnames. They are surnames given to them by white people. Yeah. You've got to think of things like that.
But okay, I think of things like that. But for me, I go, oh, this is going to sound like a horrible thing to say, probably, right? but like I'm a different man when it comes to, how most men are like, oh, if you're having a son or a daughter, oh, you're having a son. Oh, you've got a lineage. It's about your ancestors before you and this and that, right? I love it. I love thinking that way. And I love thinking that I've made my ancestors that I know proud. So, for instance, my grandfathers, both grandfathers I knew. I didn't really know my great grandfathers, but I love the idea of thinking that they're proud of me.
Yeah.
Anything after them, it's all up to the universe, man. My mom and dad have looked at our family trees going back to, my old man will say, oh, you come from King Solomon, as part of yes. And for me, I don't look at it the same way as they do, and I sometimes feel guilty about that.
Some people is more powerful than others.
Yeah, I mean, I believe that you're a little bit of everyone who's come before you. Mm-hmm. But I guess I just get lost in the mix. And to your point that, yes, I think that everybody 2 generations back, unless you know where you came from, as in your immediate family, your family's huge. We're all kind of connected in that kind of way. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? And I think that it's great to have culture or heritage. Culture, I'm getting them confused again, right? So heritage being what? Heritage is your lineage, whereas culture is how you conduct yourself within that lineage, right? Would those be the 2 separate things?
No idea.
So maybe I'm getting a little off subject. But you see what I'm trying to say, right? So I guess I've always just looked at it completely different, And I think to myself, like, the only thing I'm really worried about is, selfishly, I suppose, is the family that I know, that I still have, and the generation that I know I can influence, hopefully in the right way, or 2 generations. Like, so for instance, I often think that I'd love to leave some sort of generational wealth. Something that I know that not only my grandkids will be affected of, but their grandkids.
But I mean, you got to look at it in terms of linking the past. I mean, you're saying, yeah, I'm just going back to my grandfathers. Which is perfectly understandable, but your grandfathers just went back to their grandfathers. So people, so there were people who are impacted by their grandparents a lot more than their parents sometimes.
Yeah,
but so you could have had a situation where they were impacted by their grandparents, and that is going way back. If you look at your grandparents' grandparents, we are going back to the time, so it's not as far back as we think it is.
Yeah, I suppose that's a very interesting point, isn't it?
So that's why, going back to the thing I said about the South, you've got people now, and you're saying you've got people whose grandparents' grandparents were slaves. So it is not that far back.
Yeah, but on one hand, but then on the other hand, look, I mean, the Wright brothers only invented the airplane in, 1904 or something like that, right? So the last 100 years.
Let's not get into the dispute about the Wright brothers.
No.
Whether they were the people who invented it.
I'm not talking about that. Well, that's for another.
Don't get me started on that.
Well, why? You don't think the Wright brothers were responsible for inventing the airplane?
They were the first person who recorded it.
Right, okay.
But anyway, never mind.
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh, well, there you go.
Even after I visited the Wright Brothers Museum.
You should look that up.
Maybe I will look that up later on. But my point being is look, the last 100 years have been, Christ, the last 50 years have been nothing but change. The industrial age has changed life and the world as we know it.
That's it.
Don't you think?
Last 50 years.
Look, dude, you're carrying around a phone in your pocket that says that the world has changed in the last 50 years. Come on.
50 years from that was momentous as well.
Correct. That's what I'm trying to say.
And the 50 years before that.
Well, it depends on what you look as the progress of technology. From creating the wheel to working your way up to the gear, etc. Yeah, my point is that amount of change is completely different, and I'm influenced by it. Yes, there are things that are compounding technology and history. Has changed to get us to the point where now molecules are flying through the air that we don't even know about, and they're transmitting to my laptop and my phone, and I couldn't tell you how that works.
Right.
I went on a little tangent there, but you know what I'm saying, right? So in order to say that the 150 years was any different than now, or that we're affected by what's happened then, generationally, I guess I just don't look at it that way. I look at an immediate short term. This is what we know. This is how we know it, and that comes to both culture and heritage when it comes to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? Like, okay, so another interesting point is, I suppose, that at what point do you think, how many generations from now do you think we won't really see anything, but everybody will have a bit of color to their skin? Because as we keep going, we're going to basically all be pigmented.
When do I think that will happen?
No, I don't, well, yeah, but I would love to think that will happen eventually.
Presumably it would.
Do you think then people will still
imagine.
be going on it?
What? Still be what? Talking about
Black, white?
No, of
all
course
this kind
they
of
wouldn't, because
It's a beautiful thought, right? You see what I'm trying to say? I would love that.
But I think that we're a long way until that occurs.
But then, would that not make everyone unique? Would that not make me unique? So I'm just like every other schlub. So then I've got delusions of grandeur and how I'm going to separate myself from the pack, and etc. And how am I going to rise above? Like, would it create a whole different set of problems?
Probably. I'm sure there'll be something.
Yeah. Then it's the guy with the long toe. The third long toe is the enemy.
Yeah, I mean, there's other things that people have. I guess it is a human trait for us to do that. No matter what, we will find some kind of fault.
Yeah.
I mean, look at hair. People with red hair get abuse.
Oh yeah.
So. Yeah. So it's
You notice how I've gone instantly quiet. I don't know what you're talking about.
I know.
People with red hair don't get any abuse at all.
Not at all. So yeah. So, we are, as creatures, dumb that we kind of like find these things to pick up on.
Yeah, but again, I go with the fact that I always have some sort of, I guess I look at it as guilt. Maybe it isn't guilt, but my thought process is always, how can I be better within it? And
That's good.
And if I'm not standing there waving a flag on either side going, this is what I believe in or this is what I don't believe in, I believe that basically generally people are good. And yes, bad shit happens, but I have to go into it thinking that there are going to be other factors that always weigh into the overall problem. And that, I guess, makes me ignorant to the overall, ignorance is bliss in that respect.
I think as I said, I think we need to listen. I mean, you said, do I know, I've never been to the Deep South.
Yeah.
No, I've never been to the Deep South. This is true.
Yes.
And whilst you have. So you have experience of going there, and you're saying, no, I don't think it is as bad as it is. But that is based on your biased opinion because of your situation, what you have encountered. Whilst no experience whatsoever, but I have just listened to other people.
Yeah.
And what they are saying. And so that's why I think we need to listen to other people more. Simple as that. And that's why, in terms of Black Lives Matter, you're saying, well, I'm not sure and everything. No, we listen to them. If people saying they're being unfairly stopped by the police, let's listen to them.
Yeah, I mean, I agree
Let's
with
not
it.
let's not just automatically say, "Oh, no, I don't believe you."
Let's not forget though that sometimes it's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease, right? So there are going to be situations. I'm not denying that things happen. I'm not denying that there's loads of situations all over the place that I don't understand or comprehend, and there are ways that we can change it. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is, well, no, I mean, I'm not even trying to contradict myself there. I agree with you completely. However, my personal take on it is overall, I have to believe that intrinsically the whole situation is good.
I think it's a case of looking at probability. If, for example, if you toss a coin, it could come up as tails the first 10 times, and you're thinking, well, it's always going to come up tails. No, you do it 100 times, and then it'll kind of even itself out. Do it 1,000 times,
yeah, sure.
It'll be even itself out even more.
Yeah.
Okay. So if the first person said, well, I'm a black person and I keep being stopped by the police, say you don't necessarily have to presume that is correct based on the first person.
Sure.
But when there are more and more instances of reading about it, presume that the trend is this is what happens.
I mean, yeah, and unless, of course, those incidences...
Don't go just by just your personal experience. Look at what other people are saying as well.
I mean, look, I know, well, I don't know that many people, but I would say I know a handful of people. I know, it depends on what kind of connections you're talking about. I have, upwards of a couple thousand LinkedIn connections. I have 300 and something odd Facebook connections, which aren't really always friends or people that I'm aware of. I have a very small circle of actual friends. Christ, I have nobody who wants to come on this podcast for obvious reasons. And I personally have only had one person that I deal with at this point who's ever said that they had a problem with the police. Now, it turns out that this person may have had other extenuating factors. My house has never been searched by the police. My car has never been searched by the police because I've never put myself in a situation where my house or my car will be searched. Mm-hmm. So it isn't just a fact that this guy was a black Muslim guy. Mm-hmm. It's the fact that he situationally put himself in a higher statistic of the situation to get himself exposed to that. And I have to believe that there is a high proportion of situations where, look, if you're in the wrong place at the wrong time, now don't get me wrong, I've listened to a couple of different talks on Facebook that a few of my guys that I went to high school with have done, and one of them's a very smart dude, and he says, look, my son has to have a new driver's license and his ID and stuff ready before he can go out. If he don't go out, he does not go out until he's got his driver's license so he can produce it in the event that he's stopped. Mm-hmm. That's common sense, right? He's being very proactive with how that's going to happen. But his son probably won't be stopped, I would hope. Mm-hmm. But, I mean, I think it does happen, and that's the unfortunate thing. And it probably happens as a result of certain situations. And that's what I think we need to look at, more investment in community. We need to look at more a way to raise up everybody. But then again, does that make it bad if I say everybody's important and not just right? You see what I'm saying?
The all lives matter. As I said, all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter, and that could be with anything until Asian lives matter.
Yeah, interesting.
You can't say, that's what I say. You have to help others in order to get everything more equal. If you want an equal society, you've got to look and see who needs to be helped.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah. Okay. All right. Yeah. Thanks for that. That's. I think we can close the door on that one now.
Is that a good ending?
Well, no, it's not a good ending. No, we're not even close. Are you tired? Are you worn out?
I'm fine.
Yeah. All right. Let's keep going.
Okay.
So that also then I guess ties into as you were saying those closing comments. Also, I was thinking about so then look at the dole system here in the UK.
Right, dole system.
The dole system, is that what you would call it?
That's a very old word.
Is it an old word? Is it dole? Is dole a derogatory word?
No, I don't think it's derogatory.
Okay, I was just making sure. What would you call it here? The benefit system. Look at the benefit system.
Benefit system is a more recent word which would be used. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So I suppose that needs to be reformed in kind of the exact same ways, because situationally, it's taken advantage of in many ways. But situationally,
is it taken advantage of?
It depends on if you talk about, and here's where I'm going to take a side. If you talk about people from England who are generationally getting assistance, and by that I mean their parents did, they did, their kids probably will do, and they won't work. Or you're talking about immigrants like myself who have come and instead of working like I have from Europe, they get full benefits to be here. I think that's interesting.
Do they?
Yes, as far as I know. I haven't heard anything to the contrary. Have you?
I'm not sure they're completely entitled to all benefits. I don't think. I'm sure there's something that stops
Be interesting to find out.
Yes.
Anyway, so that just came into my head as you said that.
Yep.
Yeah, so I thought that was interesting,
Okay.
and I did make absolutely no point there at all in my going on, but it's okay.
But this is we're going back to one of my favorite things, where not everything is black and white. There are things which are grey. Not everything is yes and no. There is in the middle. So, for example, social housing.
Yeah.
So, should people, there's loads of people, lots of things about, we need to have more social housing for people to live in because we can't have people who don't have a house.
Right.
Which, yes, that makes sense. But then you have the situation whereby they just get a house which they just live in for the rest of their lives. So they've got no chance of moving on at all.
Which, by the way, I think is horseshit.
What?
I don't believe in social housing. I think that the idea of a council house to me is ridiculous.
Exactly. But then you're kind of like, so what would be your alternative then? If you think it's bad, what would be your alternative?
My alternative would be that they would have to have a cap on some assistance that they get to get them on the right path. And that cap would be time honored. So if you are in society and you need help, you have to take the personal initiative to help yourself. So my reform on the whole entire situation would be one of, for instance, you lose your job, you can get assistance, you get help for a certain amount of time whilst you're training or whilst you're trying to work and do something else. But it has to have an end. It can't be forever, unless, of course, there's a situation where you medically cannot work and you're in a situation where you have to be helped, right? That makes sense to take care of the most vulnerable in our society. But what I believe is we make much more vulnerable individuals by helping them too much. There are generations of people who have been in the system in the UK.
That's the problem. Yes, you do
And
get people
there
who are kind of like
taking advantage of the situation.
Well, not necessarily through their own wishes, but who are kind of been institutionalized, kind of almost.
Yes, institutionalized is a great way of putting it. But I believe you need to break that institution. I believe you need to break that cycle, and you need to go, right, here's the thing, sunshine. You've got 2 years to sort your shit out and get going as good as possible and prove to me that you're okay, right? Or else you don't get any dough. That's all there is to it. And the idea...
And then what do you do when they don't?
You cut them off and you give them no choice but to do it. And then they end up on the streets with problems. No, I don't know.
Exactly.
That's a joke.
So
yes,
but it's true.
it's a valid argument.
Then what? Then what when they're on the streets? Then what do you do?
No,
you
no,
just
I
have
think
people on the streets?
I think you will get situations, right, where you will break the chain, or you may not break the chain by setting a limit on it, right? By saying to someone, look, we're going to help you help yourself, right? At a certain point, this goes into many things in life, whether it's, addiction, problems, whatever.
Mm-hmm.
When it comes to this, we're going to help you. We're going to make sure you've got what you need to train to, get yourself on your feet, whether you're a single mother or a family man or whatever, right? We're going to help you out. We're going to give you the training you want to do. We're going to do this, but we're only going to do it for a certain amount of time. And you have to justify to me that you're doing all you can. And by that, I don't mean going down to the job center and applying for a couple of jobs down in London when you live in Crewe, and that's going to justify your.
But you presume that doesn't exist now.
What, the cap?
Yeah, you presuming it's just a simple life at the moment where you just have to do that. It's not the case at all.
What do you mean?
The hoops you have to jump through at the moment to get those benefits are a lot harder than you think they are.
They might be difficult. They might be somewhat hard, but they're not as hard as getting up and grinding the 9 to 5. I would argue that point with almost anybody.
Probably not, but I don't think it's as easy as you think it is.
Yeah.
In terms of like applying for jobs, it's certainly a lot. What you have to do in order to get your unemployment benefit is a lot harder than what you think. Just doing a couple of jobs, applications. No, you have to do a lot more than you think.
Do you?
Yeah.
I didn't know that. I don't know that.
From what I've read and for what things I've seen, yes, you have to do a lot more than what you're thinking they have to do.
Okay, well, it should be that way. Okay, but I don't.
I don't think the British benefit system is a lot more difficult than you're making it out to be.
You think that it is, or you don't think it is?
I think it is. Yes.
Okay, well, that's interesting. It might
like,
be.
Like, for example, the whole thing about the universal credit. I mean, do you know much about
I have no. So this is a situation that I get talked to about all the time with both employees that come to me and everybody else. I don't understand it. I don't pay any mental energy to it at all.
Universal credit, the whole idea of it in itself is quite a good idea. It's basically rolling all benefits into one.
Oh, right. Okay, universal credit is in the one payment thing instead of
the one payment rather than.
I thought you meant about like you were talking about like tax credits or something like that.
No,
I thought you were talking,
well, that comes under it. In terms of universal credits, in terms of one payment, the whole idea of it is, it's quite a good idea because it is it's trying to make it so it is equivalent to getting a wage. Whereby people
giving you the responsibility to not go blow all your shit on cigarettes and TVs.
Exactly. So, like, if you had a job, you would get a wage. Say, like, for example, at the end of the month, you would get a big lump sum, and it's up to you to manage your money.
Yeah.
And universal credit is kind of like the same thing. So you get a lump sum at a certain time, and it's up to you to manage it. So it is putting the personal responsibility, which you really like, upon the person.
Okay.
That's good. The problem is, one of the problems which they've had with it is presuming that people have savings already or have some kind of means to manage between them losing their income and them getting this new income.
Yes.
So you were getting people who were going, for example, 6 weeks without any means of support.
Okay.
Which is a big, major problem. They cannot survive that. If you gave this person the money straight away, if people didn't have to wait the 6 weeks, then they would get them, so long as if you were also giving them support in terms of managing their money. That's another thing. We don't have that. We have less. This is education in school. There's lots of things we should be educating children in school more about, and one of them is how to deal with money.
Sure, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
So there's that thing. We need to educate people how to deal with their money, and we also need to give them the money up front so they can start managing things.
Yeah, it's interesting, and just as you were saying that, the only thing I thought about was, during this recent coronavirus stuff, I can't believe how fast, both in the States and in England, that everybody had help from the government all of a sudden. So, like in America, right? It was everybody got like, I don't know, what was it, $1,000 or something, or $1,200, and it instantly was like paid to them in such a short amount of time. They did the whole entire country, or in the UK, in such a short amount of time, they gave all these grants out and these furlough schemes. They did it in less time than they probably would have,
because they had to,
for the universal credit thing, though. But my point is interesting, as you were mentioning that, how quickly they reacted and did it here,
yes,
as opposed to the people who were
because it was a lot less. Even though there's like it's situations where people may be missing out, there was a lot. It was more of a blanket kind of thing. Whilst with things where the universal credit, it's much more kind of, well, we need to look at this situation and this situation and everything.
Yeah,
it's a lot more of that.
Oh, there's a delivery coming to the studio there. We'll just ignore that.
Okay.
Will we ignore it, or should I go get it?
It's up to you.
I don't know. I think I'm gonna leave it.
Okay. Are you expecting anything important?
I don't know what I'm expecting, actually.
Okay.
I think it's a pair of trainers.
Exciting.
See if he rings the bell again. The guy downstairs will help us out. He knows we're recording upstairs.
Okay.
So yeah. Anyway, but the speed with which they did that is very interesting.
I mean, maybe that's our attitude as a society that the government was picking up upon, where we kind of like generally not keen on like giving out benefits to people.
Yeah. But
when it's kind of like a case of when the economy is going to completely crash and everything, it's like, yeah, we might want to just dish out some money for that.
Okay. Right, I'm totally on another planet now that guy has come. I lost my train of thought completely.
Oh dear.
Okay. But that's okay. So I guess it happens. And I'm sorry, I should have put on a mask when I got up and walked by you there.
Don't worry, you weren't too close.
No, I know I wasn't too close. But the thing is, it leads me very nicely into another bitching rant that I've got.
Okay, right.
Which is the fact that during this coronavirus stuff, we did get things going quite quickly, and now we're seeing the repercussions of the fact that the states had opened up a little too quickly, and the fact that most people aren't showing any kind of common sense when it comes to the situation. It drives me nuts.
Are most people, or is it just certain people?
Well, I think that the proof is in the pudding. When I walk out and I'm wearing a mask and I go shopping or I go anywhere else, I would say less than 3%.
But is that because the other people like you who would be wearing a mask are actually at home, and so you're not seeing them?
No.
The only people you're seeing are the people out and about who don't really care.
Yeah, I'm seeing loads of people who are out and about and don't really care. And the fact
because they're the people who go out. The people who wear masks, like myself and my family, we're at home.
Yeah.
I mean, I used to go to the shop much more often, food shop and everything. Used to go much more often. Now I'm just once a week.
It's a very positive outlook that perhaps most people aren't actually taking advantage of the situation or out and about.
I don't know whether it's most, but there is, a percentage of people who are at home who are taking it seriously, and there's a percentage of people who are just careless, and that you could see that on loads of things.
Yeah,
there are just people who are like that, and there are people who aren't.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, it's that's way.
Okay, I'm not worried about the people
as a population.
I'm not worried about the people that are at home and that are playing by the rules. I'm worried about the jackasses that I see out and about.
Oh, but you get them on anything. Well, no matter what it is, it's not just the virus. You get that on anything.
I know, but one of the things that has been a byproduct of this latest situation is I can't believe the amount of people who are arguing the common sense of just covering up a mask. Like with a mask. I've talked to enough bags of hot air. I am a bag of hot air. And I've talked to enough people in my life where I'm spitting little spittle out of my mouth and doing whatever else that it just makes common sense. And why wouldn't you put on a mask that costs 21 pence when you leave the house, just on the off chance that if you did have it, even if you don't have it, that you're going to not spread it to someone else. So you look at, and I always get like pointed out for pointing this out, but if you look at Asian countries, for instance, or Hong Kong, or places where masks are worn. Korea,
Yes.
Like with schools are going to be opening up soon, right?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't get a kid to wear a school mask. You can't get a kid to wear a mask when they go to school. And I'm looking at videos of these well-behaved little Korean kids that are all sitting there in class in their little cubicles, all wearing a mask.
Culture.
Yes, that is culture, and that's common sense.
But that's the way that. Well, they've obviously had more dealings with these kind of things. There's been more outbreaks in Asia than there is of various things over in the last decades or so.
That could be very true.
So they've dealt with this before, and it is also they're kind of in their culture to obey laws and do that kind of thing more. Whilst us in the West, we're more kind of like, no, we want our freedom. I mean, looking at simply the UK, and you may be moaning about the UK and everything, but I'm sure there's more people in the UK who are more willing to possibly abide by the laws than there are in America, because America is built on that kind of thing of doing their own thing, individual kind of like doing their own thing.
But an interesting thing that I found as a byproduct of that is, again, like not wanting to be part of the herd, I could give a shit if the law says or if the government says that I should be doing this, right? Like, I don't care if they make it mandatory or not to wear a mask. It doesn't make any difference, neither here nor there to me. From the beginning, from day one, I wanted to wear a mask, not only to protect myself, but to protect those around me, because I looked at it.
I'm sure there'll be more people wearing a mask if the government said you should be wearing a mask.
And that's what I find really interesting.
I think as a society, we are more, in the UK, we are more likely to obey the rules. We are kind of like a bit of a rule-abiding country. So I think in general terms, if the government said everyone should be wearing a mask outside, then you would see a lot more people wearing a mask.
Yeah, I mean, and don't get me wrong. Like, there's certain times when I'm outside where I'll have the mask down around my chin, because I know that there's nobody within 50 feet of me, and I'm not just going to go walking around in a mask, like I'm worried that way. But I think if there's the slightest possibility that I'm going to be in contact with someone, like right now, obviously we've got our little sneeze screen.
I think a lot of it is also on the fact that the mask is not protecting you, it's you protecting others. I think that has a big part of it.
Yes.
Because, it's not wearing a mask, going around, and it's not going to protect you from people who have the virus.
Sure.
But if you had it and you went around, you were protecting others. So I think there's a lot of selfishness about that, where kind of like, well, I don't need to wear, I know I haven't got it, so therefore I don't need to wear a mask. I think there's a lot of that.
And now all we're going to have to do is just sit back and see where it all goes. I mean, who knows? I'm very cynical now all of a sudden with it all, and I've taken a huge hit, on the market, and a huge hit, with the businesses and stuff like that, and not being able to open up correctly, and all the stuff that I'm involved in, and I just think I just feel doom and gloom about most of it. I think that although I'm trying to be as positive as possible, I think that we're really headed into a situation here that doesn't look very good, as far as economy and as far as being able to start back up properly. And I think we're going to see a huge second wave. And I just hope that none of my friends and family are involved in it.
Yeah, I would agree. I look at the positives a bit of it. I mean, that it is kind of like an impetus to change some things. I do like that kind of aspect.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
It is something which is different. It is like adding to, I mean, for example, the emphasis on more kind of like walking and cycling, and like cycle lanes popping up. I do kind of like that aspect of it, that it is given the opportunity to bring about things like that.
Yeah, whether or not people will actually use them and do it, that's going to be a whole other story. Now, see, we were completely different. Admittedly, we did not go out of the house for 8 weeks or 10 weeks. The only time I went out of the house was to do our shop. Every 2 weeks. I went out every 2 weeks. I did one massive shop.
We did once a week.
Yeah, but we didn't exercise. We didn't go out and do anything.
Oh, no, we went out for some walks as well.
No, we went out in the back garden, and that was it. And we did everything we did back there. We did a little bit of calisthenics and just kind of got the kids moving and did that kind of stuff. But we stayed in because I was that not freaked out about it, but I was that much like, look, if we're going to do it, let's do it properly, and let's see how we go. And now I'm to the point where I think that even with all these nice changes that have happened, I hope that they stick, and I hope people actually just won't take that whole that whole mentality that they don't care. But the proof is in the pudding. When you look at the pubs opening up, I can't believe how many people were excited that the pubs were going to be opening back up. And I just thought, there's just got to be so much more to life. There's so many.
Well, we had a thing. There was a thing on. There was a moan on Facebook about in Nantwich about how there was people sitting in the square drinking cans and everything.
Yeah.
And someone moaned about it, saying it's not particularly great look. There's people just sat in there. And then there was all these other people who defended them. So, oh, well, no, they've got nowhere to sit. They can't go into pubs. They can't meet their friends and everything.
Yeah.
And I did think to myself, how bad is it that you can't meet a friend without having a drink? I mean, bear in mind, I don't drink at all. So
no, sure, of course, yeah.
How bad is it that you can't meet up with friends outside without having a tin of something?
Well,
to drink?
It's not even just that. It's just you could instantly see.
I personally don't get the pub culture at all because I never have. I'm not a pub kind of person. The only time I really go into a pub is if I'm going to have something to eat rather than something to drink.
Sure, yeah.
I'm not that kind of person at all. However, I mean, there was a history program I was watching with my daughter because it was like a period of history she was looking at. And it kind of like did look at like the history of pubs and how important pubs are to the psyche of British people. Yeah. They are kind of like hold this kind of like strange kind of like now, going back to medieval times, the kind of like one of the two meeting points you had in the village was the church and the pub.
Yeah.
There is that element of it. Pubs do hold this kind of like weird place in our culture. Sure.
Yeah.
So
no,
I don't personally get it as much, but
yeah.
There are people who it is a part of their life to go to the pub and meet their friends. We're not talking about the people who are queuing up to.
No. Yeah, of course. Yeah.
We're talking more of a kind of. It is part of their life.
Yeah, it's crazy, isn't it?
Yeah. I don't get it, but it is.
When I finally did venture out, the only place I came was to the office here, and to the studio, and I'm the only person in here, and I actually went out of the house like Bruce Willis in 12 Monkeys every single day. I was masks, gloves. I was very cautious about everything I touched. You'll see that I've got disinfectant at the front door down there. I use the disinfectant as soon as I come in. I've got disinfectant on the tables. I've gone through bottles of this stuff since this has all gone down because I'm very...
You're lucky to be able to get it.
I'm over the top. No, I'm not lucky at all. No, anybody can get it.
Disinfect the what's it? The hand sanitizer?
Yeah, hand sanitizers, masks, anybody
we can find any.
Yeah.
We were looking.
Admittedly, I had to go to a supplier, and it took me several suppliers. And when I did find a supplier, he was kind of a cowboy about the whole thing. But
the main one I've been using came from Dubai, so it was very posh one.
Really, that's interesting. So again, I guess that's a point that comes along with the masks, right? Is as at one point the kind of the guidance was you don't need a mask or an N95 mask because they wanted it more for our medical providers, right? And they were trying to, they had problems supplying.
Yeah.
So I guess that's where some of the mask stuff came around. But anyway, so with this, I was very kind of germ free environment in here and all that kind of stuff. And as I say, it was about maybe 10 weeks after the lockdown. I decided to come up to the office a couple times. And the first day I came up, I was looking outside the front window there, and there were literally, I don't know if you know, outside there's that rail there. There were like 14 guys all sitting there with cans, all sitting asses and elbows right next to each other, just shooting the shit, just acting like nothing had ever even happened. There were loads of people on the high street, and I just kind of sat upstairs with my mask on, just like looking out the window, like as if like full of dread, like thinking we're doomed. And I've kind of got over that now. But anyway, on that note, we'll cut it there just in case, because I don't know how long it'll take me to do all this. And we'll do this again for sure. And then let me see if I can nail this outro.
Okay, outro music.
Yeah, I'll try it once and just see how we go.
Okay.
Just see. That's it, man.
Okay.
That's the one. All right. Thanks very much, guys. We'll do this again. And thank you, as always, Chris.
You're welcome.
Thanks, brother.